to the August capital chat here for the Iowa Developmental Disability Council. Today we are going to talk about voting, but go ahead, Brady, welcome us in.
Hi everybody, my name is Brady Werger. I am currently the chair for the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council. I want to thank all of you for attending this today. Today's discussion will be on voting, and I really think that this will be a great topic. Feel free to ask questions at any time if you don't understand something or need more information about something, and we will try to answer you the best as possible. I want to introduce Brooke Lovelace. Brooke is the director for the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and Bill Collestead is our public policy manager with the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council, and then Amy Campbell, which is one of our state lobbyists at the state capitol. And then I also would like to thank today Daniel for being our interpreter today. So Bill, Brooke, take it over.
Thank you, Brady. And let's talk about voting. So I'm going to share my screen here and get started. One second.
Well, while Bill's doing that, I was going to take it. Brady and I were just talking about this before everybody joined, that we have at least two advocates with disabilities that are running for state legislative office this year. So that's kind of exciting too. One over in the Council Bluffs area, and then many of you know Jen Wolf. She is running in just north of Waterloo, right?
The Waverly area.
Really. Yeah.
So I believe she will be Bremer, Floyd, Chickasaw, and Butler counties.
So that's some good connections that we continue to look at the candidate list to see if there's other connections as well. I know that we had a congressional candidate that, or U.S. Senate candidate that contacted us that he has a child with a disability too. So it's good to see those connections with people.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And that's really important news as we kind of look towards the election, kind of think about how we're going to cast our vote this November. And so this is our topic today to talk about voting, and we've got quite a few details to go over. But all of this material is available on our website and accessible to all people to be able to kind of go through in more detail. If I read each one of the slides, I'd put you all to sleep. So I'm going to go through some really big highlights. But if you have questions or if something's not clear, put it in the chat. Brooke, Amy, and Brady will be monitoring that, and we'll be able to pause and answer some specific questions. But again, welcome, and excited to talk about the elections. So let's talk about getting ready to vote. And the last 2 years, there have been new legislation that have changed some of the targets or the deadlines or the time frames to cast your vote. And I'm not going to go over into each one of those details of what has changed, but really give you the more important dates. But they have narrowed the time to cast your absentee ballot. They have narrowed the time that you can vote prior to the election. And then all of that's, you know, in the vein of trying to make sure that we have voting integrity. And so with that, we just want to make sure it's clear what the deadlines are. So this is a big picture look at the general election deadlines. You can see there from kind of left to right, October 30th or August 30th through October 24th coming up very closely. You can request your absentee ballot starting right then. And just to kind of give you a framework for this slide and all of the slides going through, this right here is a link. We'll put that in the chat, but you can click onto that and you can kind of determine some of those dates, and then you can find where to receive your absentee ballot. Again, then starting in October 19th through November 8th, you can turn in your absentee ballot, and we'll go into more specifics about that. if you're not registered to vote right now, the deadline, you can do it now all the way up till October 24th. We'll go over some of those specifics there. And then we know that usually the county auditor's office is open the Saturday prior to every election, and they are now open 8 to 5. That's, for example, that's a change that was in the law. It used to be 8 to 6. Seems a little specific. So 8 to 5, but anytime going up to the election, starting that early voting, you could go to your county auditor's office and cast your vote, but you could also do it the Saturday prior if you don't want to go to your polling place. And then November 7th is your last deadline to vote in person with your absentee ballot. And then, of course, election day. And a lot of people like to choose to wait to vote in person on their polling place, which is, a personal preference. Prior to the pandemic, I think that was a lot of people's preferences, but during the pandemic over the last few years, there's been a huge increase in absentee voting or voting at the county auditors or using drop boxes. So we'll go through some of those specifics, but those are the key dates there. So now we're going to vote, and we got to talk about the simple steps, the simple steps to vote. So the first thing is just to make sure you're registered. I sometimes even like to go into these links here and just make sure that I am registered. It's really simple. You click on the link. It's on our website. It's also on the Secretary of State's website. That's really easy, sos.iowa.gov. Just click on it. You put in your name, and I think it's your zip code, and they'll tell you, yes, you are, or no, you're not. And if you aren't, then it shows you how to register. And you can register online right there. If you have your information of your driver's license and your address, you can register by mail. You can print that off and send that. You can also go down to the county auditor's office in your area, and they would help you do that. So the first thing is everybody register. And, if you're playing along here at home, you can put a thumbs up on your video, make sure that you're registered to vote if you know that. The second thing is choosing how to vote. And really, those are just kind of two simple options they offer. You can vote by absentee ballots and send that in. We went over those deadlines earlier. Or you can vote by polls, and you can actually go to the poll the day of and vote that way. But once you choose your path, then that will kind of be looking into how are you going to go about doing that correctly, and then casting your ballot. And that's your simple third step. So, register who are you going to vote for, or choose how you're going to vote, and then casting your ballot. Do not forget your ID. That is part of the new laws, to make sure you have that with you when you go to register, or your voting card. All right. So we go into a little more detail, even more exciting, talking about registering to vote. And there's a few ways. We talked about this just a second, but you can vote by mail. You can register by mail. You can do it online, and you can do it the election day. And just to talk a little specifically about the election day is, if you're registering on election day at your polling place, you must provide proof of your identity and where you live. So you'd bring your driver's license and maybe your utility bill, or your, some mail that has your address on there. That would be kind of more of an official document, whether it's utility or phone bill. And then you could visit, if you have questions about that, you could visit the Secretary of State. One of the big questions that comes up in a lot of our surveys is getting informed. And so again, you want to find out who's running in your area, and I'm going to pass this over to Amy in a second, but kind of finding out who you're going to vote for is really important. The Secretary of State, anybody who's running in your area, Amy kind of talked about 2 candidates that are going to be running this next year, but you can go to the Secretary's website and you can get a list of candidates for whoever's running for offices that are going to affect your area. If it's very specific to your county, or if it's to the state, if you want to look at the 2 options for governor this next year, you can look at both of theirs and kind of get into their websites from there. So any comments on that, Amy?
No, I just would encourage everybody to check out websites or on social media for the candidates. They're actually very responsive, even if you ask them questions via social media or instant messaging them. We typically have a candidate guide that we put up on InfoNet, and we're having a little trouble this year with the parties getting the information. It's a little bit delayed this year because of the new districts. So hopefully we'll be getting that up here in the next, couple weeks. I think we've gotten one party's information, but not the other. So hopefully we'll have that up And then we're going to devote InfoNet the next, the fall edition to voting and some of the candidate questions that we're asking them. So we'll have some more information in that that's going at out the end of September. So.
Thank you, Amy. And you're going to hear some continued themes that we're going to talk about all the way through here. But the second step about knowing your rights is know your rights to vote. And you get to vote independently. All those polling places need to be accessible. And if they're not, you know, raise your voice. Your voice does matter. And then you can ask for help, and we'll go over more specific what that looks like. And then there is accessible equipment, and people are trained to assist you and provide that correctly. But again, you know, you can vote early, and you can do that by absentee ballots. You could do it at your county auditor's office, or if you choose to vote by election day. Polling places vary for different elections, but making sure you know that area is specific to there. So. All right. So we have a new slide, and Brooke has put a link in the chat that tells you about all of our different tools. So you can go through those a little more specifically or more detailed, but we really want to lay out for people. There are 3 easy ways to vote. You can vote by mail. Again, kind of repetitive, but we talked about the absentee ballot, and you can fill out that form and mail it into your county auditors. I'm going to pause here for a caution commercial, is that this summer we had a chance to speak at the county auditors summer conference, and we were told that in the primary this last summer that some people had requested their ballot, maybe as the ballots came available, maybe chose some time once the ballot got to their house to think about who they were going to vote to and mailed it back. And some of those ballots did not make it back to the county auditor's office in time. Prior, if it was mailed, the old law, I don't want to confuse you with the old law, but the old law might have said you could mail it, and as long as it was postmarked, it would be accepted. Now it actually has to be in the county auditor's office, and I'll go over that date here in a second. So you do want to mail that in as quickly as possible. Another option would be to take your ballot, get it sent to your house, fill it out, and then hand deliver that to the county auditor's office. That would be another way to do that, and you could still do the ballot, absentee ballot, but you're still delivering it yourself. You can also put that in your own mailbox and have that sent back out. It is a return email, so a return letter. Curbside voting. At that same county auditor's office, they said they don't get a lot of requests for curbside voting, but it is really a very accessible way for people to vote. If a voter is not able to enter the polling place, 2 polling workers will come out, they'll assist you, they'll take your ballot. And then from that standpoint, you'll have a chance to cast your vote. And I know that some of the county auditors said they offer this and there's signs up for it, and not a lot of people make arrangements. I would really encourage you to call your county auditor. We have those links in our website. You'll hear that, just repeat that a number of times, but we have those links in our website, and then you can contact your county auditor and tell them you're coming in approximately the time, and they'll make sure that someone's there to help. And then the last part is, what kind of help can you receive? You can certainly ask for someone to help market your ballot. You know, if you're having trouble reading it or it's not accessible to you because of your disability, they can help you. The second person, you can choose someone to vote. There is a law in there that says your employer can't help you, or your employer's agent. Besides that, there's a lot of different people who can provide assistance with you to vote. And then third is, there are accessible equipment there that you can ask for voting assistance as well, if that's something that you need. So 3 easy ways to vote. Vote by mail. You can go up and vote by the curb, or you can ask for help. Those are important ways to make sure that you cast your vote. Go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to say that I really hope everybody emphasizes the curbside option, even though it is smart to call ahead, you know, or have somebody that can run in and let them know you're there. Thinking about Iowa winters, we've had election days where there's been a lot of snow on the ground, and, you know, even just a little bit of ice can be treacherous for people going in. I think that's a really important option, especially since you're now depending on the mail, making sure it gets there on time. You really have to vote those ballots fast and request them early in order to have that confidence. So I do think that the curbside is an option that is really good for anybody. you don't have to have a disability to use it. If you feel uncomfortable going in, then you can ask for this as well. I know some county auditors are going to put placards with a number you can call if you just drive up and forget to call ahead.
Yep. Those should be there. I know our voting place, it's right as you pull into the roundabout, and there's a sign right there, and you could just park right there and make your phone call and do that way as well. I think it's really, what I heard very clearly from the county auditors is it's a great option. They have people at the ready, willing to help and able to help. And sometimes people don't ask for help, or they see people who could use it, who might struggle to get in because of the rain or the snow, or maybe just the way the building is supposed to be accessible, but it's not as accessible as it should be. But once you get in, if you do go in, then ask for help. And you don't have to remember these 3 bullets of how they can help you. They're trained to help you, and they can tell you what assistance they can provide. So, all right. This is, again, kind of, let's talk about absentee voting. And I know that we've went over these all in theme, but this is just a deeper dive into that specific thing. And so just the way that you absentee ballot is you register voters can request an absentee ballot to be sent to them by mail. Then you need to complete that form and return the original form signed. You're going to sign that to a county auditor. The requests do not need to be witnessed or notarized. So if you're doing that at home, they don't have to be signed or notarized, but there's a specific thing here. It says a written application for a mailed absentee ballot must be received by the voter's county auditor no later than 5 p.m. 15 days before the election. And we went over those deadlines. I'm going to go over them again. You have to be 18 years by that date for the upcoming election and be registered to vote. So again, that 15 days, so November 8th, I think, is the election. Is that correct, Brooke? November 8th is the election. And so you want to request that 15 days before that. If the request is so late that it's unlikely the absentee ballot can be returned by mail in time to be considered to counting, the county auditor will enclose a statement to that effect, and you'll get a notice that says, hey, you better hand deliver this. You're probably not going to get that turned around. And I would just say that that's probably the concern that I heard the most, was that county auditors was concerned that if they mail it out and for whatever reason there's a delay in it getting to you because of mail, it could still take 2 to 3 days. And then if you sit on it, and I've done that, so I'll admit I've requested my absentee ballot. I knew who I was going to vote for, but I let it sit there on our dresser in our entryway, and then I mailed it back a little bit later. The cushion of time is really shrunk a little bit there. So you want to make sure you return, as soon as you get it, fill it out and send it back in. And then receiving the ballot, after receiving the ballot on the request form, we'll mail the voter ballot. With the ballot, the county auditor will include instructions on how to mark the ballot. So it should be really clear in there. And then it says there's 3 ways to deliver your ballot. Deliver your absentee ballot to the county auditor's office before the polls close on election day. So you can actually bring it to their office and hand deliver it. So you don't have to mail it back if you're worried about the mail. You can surrender your absentee ballot at the polls and just vote regularly. And then you can vote a provisional ballot at the polls if you're not able to do that. So if you're just going to return it, you can bring it back in and then you can still cast your vote. So I do think it's a really good option. I always like to pause and commercial that, a number of years ago, 25, 30 years ago, there was a small percentage of people with disabilities voting. And now the numbers are well over 60, 70% of people with disabilities are casting their vote. And so it is more accessible, it's more available. People really understand their rights. But absentee ballots, we've seen even a larger increase of people with disabilities voting. So it is a really good resource to do that. And one thing, it just seems like a simple thing to understand is you can request it and have it mailed to you, but you can still bring it back into the county auditors and submit it that way through one of their drop boxes. You don't have to mail it back in if you're worried about that time frame. So, all right, let's talk about voting rights. I hope you can read that pretty clearly, but I'm going to go over these a little bit more in detail, and Brooke, jump in if you're tired of hearing my voice say these too. We can go back and forth, but voters must be 18 and registered to vote. And then you do have to bring your ID in. If you can't prove who you are or where you live, you can ask someone. So if I'm a voter and I'm asked to show my ID, if I can't prove who I am and where I live, a registered voter from any precinct may attest for me. So if Amy and I were in the same precinct, she could attest by that. The warning with that is if we were doing that falsely just to cast a vote, it would be a Class D felony. That's new in the law, and it's punishable up by fine and up to 5 years in prison. But if Amy trusts who I am and she knows where I live and she can attest those things, that is a option for you. You can use your driver's license or a non-driver's license voter ID. That's one specific one there. Voters have the right to vote a provisional ballot if eligibility to vote is questioned. And so if you're questioned, you can do a provisional ballot and then they can verify who you are. Voters who go to the wrong precinct to vote must be given their correct precinct location by poll workers. So if you show up, and I've heard this story before from other voters, they've shown up, got to the wrong one because they have changed. My precinct just changed after I've been voting for 20 years at the same place, and I went to there, just made the assumption, and I got sent to a different one, and they told me where it was, but they are required to tell you. And so those are some broader rights to vote in Iowa, but here's ones that I think that really apply to people that have disabilities, but they really apply to all voters. Is voters have the right to vote alone or with help. So you could do it by yourself and someone doesn't have to look over your shoulder, or you can vote on your own. You have the vote the way that you choose. And so I may want Brady to vote one way, but Brady's going to vote how he thinks he should vote. And that's his choice. Voters may choose who helps them, but it can't be your employee or an officer of your union. And then voters with a conservator or guardian may have the right to vote unless a judge has specifically ruled they may not. And I just pause on that one again, is that you may wonder if you have a right to vote. That's a question that comes up. You have a right to vote unless that has happened, unless a judge has specifically ruled out that you can't vote. And so that could be something that if you're clear that's happened in your past, you may be able to attest that, but that's just, a specific thing there. And then voters have the right to get help by calling the Secretary of State if someone tries to stop them from voting. Voters have the right to be shown how to make their choices on the ballot. So if you're looking at the different choices and it's unclear and it's overwhelming, go back up to the assistant and ask for help. I will tell you sometimes, you only look at these some of them every year, but the big elections, the governor or the president's every 4 years, and you want to make sure you cast your vote correctly. If you look at it and you're confused at all, and you're wondering if you're doing it correctly, you can ask for assistance. And then voters waiting in line to polling place closes must be allowed to vote. So if you get in line and it closes at 8 p.m. now and you're in line at 7, but the line is really long, you'll still be able to cast your vote. So I know that one's a little bit longer in detail. Any questions about rights to vote or anything you would add, Brooke or Amy?
Brady wanted to share a story.
Yeah, Brady, go for it.
So, okay, so this was really kind of happening more with, I noticed when I was living at the Glenwood Resource Center, but I just really want to make sure people are aware of this and really kind of think about it and process it. But I kind of felt like when I was living at the Resource Center, like people didn't educate me until I moved into the HCBS waiver program on like the people that are running for election, what they're running for, what they're advocating for. And so like when I would be living up at the Resource Center, I'd be going to my precinct to vote, but I kind of felt like there was caregivers at the Resource Center that would kind of like, oh, you should vote for this person because, if you vote for a Democrat or if you vote for a Republican, they don't advocate, like you want them to. And I kind of felt like they were kind of persuading me to vote for somebody in particular. And so it really kind of jotted my mind around. And as I got to thinking about it, I was like, this isn't me voting for the individual I want to vote for isn't your decision. This is a decision that I need to make, to better me or to better the state of Iowa or to bring change. But I kind of felt like there's a period of time where like people were trying to persuade me to vote for people who they think are important that can make change. And so I really just kind of want to encourage people when they get ready to vote for the candidate of their choice, it's up to you. It's not up to your mom. It's not up to your dad. It's not up to your spouse. It's up to you who you want to vote for. And if you strongly feel like you want to vote for somebody, then go ahead and do it. So I just kind of wanted to share that
Thank
little
you.
story.
Thank you, Brady. That's really important to understand is you have a right to vote and you have a right to vote the way you want to.
Yep.
And, I think one thing that holds people back from voting a little bit is understanding who to vote for. And Brady is a great example as an advocate who has built a relationship with legislators on both sides of the party. And when I say that, he might have some legislators that he talks to pretty consistently that are Democrats and Republicans. But the one thing they both know about Brady is what his concerns are, his issues are. So this time, and we're not talking about this today in great detail, but this is a great time, and Amy will have a slide on this coming up, but this is a great time to ask people running for office how they're going to vote on disability issues or issues that are important to you. Things that are really important to you. I know that Aaron here is on, I see Aaron, somebody from our Youth Leadership Academy is on our council today or on our meeting today. And I know that things in his hometown are really important to him, investing in his hometown, in the library, in the music, in the social things that are available to him. And so he's going to want to talk to whoever's running. It doesn't matter what party. And then he can make a decision on who he is going to vote for. But thank you, Brady.
Yeah, Bill, I just wanted to backtrack to I did post on there. You had mentioned you could check if you were registered to vote. You can check, I always check it too. If you've moved, recently, you might want to double check that you're registered at the right address. And so you can do that on the Secretary of State's website, but that site also tells you where you vote. So where your polling place is. So if you're not sure, Bill, I had the same situation. I went to the library where I always vote and I forgot about, redistricting means we're all in new districts, which might mean a new polling place. So I'm back at the City Hall now. So luckily it's just down the street, but it's good to check ahead of time, especially this year because things have changed. So you may not have the same people running that you have before. So names might be unfamiliar to you. So I think that's what Brady says is a great opportunity to kind of go out and check out what their stands are on the issues. And if they don't have something on their website that tells you about them, then contact them either by phone or email or going to one of their events. You don't have to give them money if you go to their events. You could go and just ask questions. So I think those are all good options. I mean, I do ask my friends and others who they're voting for and why, just because that's part of how I collect information. Like I've asked Bill who he's voting for on things. And I just like to know why people are thinking about that because they might have information I don't have. But I weigh that equally with what I see when I look through the ballots. So your county auditor is just a great resource for all of this information too.
Yep. Yeah, you have to go through it, hear them speak, read some of the things they've written, see some ways that they voted, and then make your own decision, as Brady said. And so just to kind of back up, now we've talked a lot about the voting and the days and the registration. I'll go over those one more time here towards the end, but we're really proud as the Iowa Developmental Disability Council. We've just recently had a press release yesterday in regards to our position on voting in Iowa and just kind of how we see some of the things that have occurred here. And so we just want to make sure that there have been changes in the law and they're making voting harder for Iowans with disabilities. And here are some of the things that have been changed in the law. There are fewer days to vote. There used to be extended days, up to 45 days, and now it's down to 28 days. There are different voting places, so they've made some changes to where you can vote and limited some of that. So they did that from narrowing the number of people they had that could assist them. There are fewer days to get and return absentee ballots, so that makes that difficult on everybody. It makes it difficult on the mail, makes it difficult that you get it and receive it. and have time to cast your important vote, and then turning back. During the pandemic, drop boxes were we saw a huge increase in drop boxes by county auditors. There have been limits to how many drop boxes they can have per county, but also there's restrictions with those drop boxes that they have to be under video surveillance, or they only can be available during certain points during the day. We saw an increase in people being able to use those. And so you really get, for instance, you might have voted and had a drop box in your county available to you in Iowa City last year. It may not be there where it was before. It may be in only 2 locations, and they may not be where they were prior elections. So you'd have to call your county auditor and find out where those are. There's limits to who can help you deliver those absentee ballots. If they're delivering it for you, if you turn it in yourself, you're free and clear. If you turn it in and you send it in by mail, you can do that. But if someone's dropping it off for you, there's limits on that. And then voters must register to vote if they did not vote the last time. So if you missed the last election because of a snowstorm like Amy was referring to, or if it was a smaller election and you just didn't have time to get out there and cast your vote, you're going to have to double check and make sure you're re-registered. It is a simple process. If you haven't moved and you have your driver's license, it's easy to re-register, but you do have to do it online. If you don't have access to a computer, or if someone that you're supporting doesn't have access to a computer, they can be a little more complicated, but you do have to re-register. And so there's some other key statements that we have in there. But like I said earlier, despite all of these challenges, making it harder for people to vote, or voting challenges, including reading and writing and making it more complicated, despite these challenges, 6 out of every 10 persons in America with a disability are voting. And we see that as a great increase. And so for Iowans with disabilities who wish to vote, our council is here to help you. And that's why we're talking about this today. We provide voter training, voter assistance, voter resources to make it easier and accessible for everybody. And I like that statement at the end. All people have the right to have their voices heard at the polls. And so we've went over some of these important pieces before, how many days you have to vote, and the availability and accessibility. But Brooke, any comments on our position paper, and anything you'd like to highlight?
I did put that actual position statement in the chat. So feel free to use that and share that with your legislators if this is something that's important to you and you want to talk to them about it. I think that's just as Bill said, the main points is that we know, and there's been a lot of talk these last few years about people having concerns about voter fraud, and their concerns may or may not be valid, but each step that they do to try to restrict voting does make it more difficult for people with disabilities. And I'm not sure if lawmakers really recognize that. I think they're trying to protect the integrity of voting, but don't realize each step that they do actually does have an impact on people with disabilities. And so we want to share that with them and educate them that actually does make it harder for people to vote who have disabilities, and our older Iowans as well too. So please feel free to share this and get the word out there about it.
Yeah, I think
Thank you, Brooke.
the important ones, and I know Bill brought this up in the subcommittee on these voting changes, that Iowans rely a lot on their neighbors and friends. And some of you may have asked a friend who's driving into town to drop off your absentee ballot at the courthouse or something, and they can't do that. Well, they could, but they'd have to go through a big process to be able to be qualified as someone who can deliver a ballot. So you can ask your neighbor to drive you into town to drop it off, but the neighbor's not supposed to handle your ballot. And that's, again, what Brooke was talking about. They were worried that who people are trusting to give their ballot. So I made the, comment that there are some people that might trust a neighbor more than their spouse to deliver their ballot. So it's one of those complicated things that is making it more difficult, because you can't just rely on somebody taking your ballot in for you. So I think that's why we're trying to really encourage all of the options so that you can decide and really make a plan It's not too early to start planning. As you see, you can request your mail-in ballot on Tuesday. So they won't be sent right away, but you can start requesting them on Tuesday, August 30th. I think that's Tuesday. And so it's not too early to start making a plan on voting. I always vote early because you never know what happens on election day. Sick kid, bad weather, car trouble, any of that stuff can happen. So I like to just go and go to the courthouse to vote. So that's a really good option too. If you're able to get somebody to take you to the courthouse, you can re-register to vote there. You can change your address there. You can register to vote and vote absentee on the same day there. You just have to have your information with you.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our documentation says make a plan. And Amy, you hit on a lot of things that are key for us to be thinking about. Making a plan to vote, you know, the simple steps of re-register, make sure you're registered, you know, make a plan to vote, or you can do it by absentee or in person, and then ask for assistance. The county auditor is your first place Secretary of State, and our equipment is there, our information is there to help you do that. So, and then this is going to go back to Amy again. She talked earlier, we are going to have a lot of material out by people who are running for office here this fall, and we've sent some information out to them. But Amy, I'll let you cue up the slide.
Sorry, I muted myself again. So I had kind of mentioned before that our fall issue of InfoNet is going to have some responses from elected officials on that we've asked them. So I'm hoping everybody's going to respond. The last time we did this was, I think, 2018, and we had a lot of, we had everybody respond that we asked. So that was really good news. So we have two people running for Secretary of State, a Republican and a Democrat. And so we asked them, it was a little bit longer of a setup for the question, but the basic question was, what will you do to improve access to voting? And we talked about access of all those options. So that's kind of a broad answer or question. I think they can fit a lot in there, but we've asked them that question, and hopefully we will get answers from both those candidates back. You also know we have a Republican, Democrat, and a Libertarian running for governor. So we gave them the option of answering one or both questions. One was on improving access to community-based services. We talked a lot about Glenwood closing and you know, the waiting list. So you can really add in a lot with that question. You could even go to the work there. They could even answer with a workforce because there's just not enough workers to provide those services. So that's a pretty broad question. And then we also wanted to ask them how they would improve options for employment for people with disabilities. So we will see if one or both or all three candidates answer those questions, and we'll have those in InfoNet. And then we've got a couple of competitive congressional races, really all of them except for the one in western Iowa. So Feenstra District is pretty safe hold, but the others are pretty competitive races. So we've asked all of the candidates for all of those 4 congressional districts the question of what they would do in Congress to make sure Iowans have access to the support and services they need to live and learn and work in their communities. So, you know, Medicaid is both federal money and state money. And a lot of what Congress allows or requires states to do get included in state laws. So there's a strong connection on Medicaid, home and community-based services at the federal level and at the state level. So some of you have been advocates on federal laws to make home and community-based services not an option, but a requirement that each state provide that. Right now, you're required to provide institutional care, and it's optional to provide home and community-based services. there's a bill that would flip-flop that and make it required, so that's the states would not be allowed to have waiting lists. Then they would have to provide those services to anyone that needs them. And so I think that's a pretty good question for them. And hopefully we will get all of them to get the answers. We've given them 500 words, which is about a page that they can answer. So it might be a long issue, but we'll have those that information up on our website and for those of you that might get it by mail, we'll have that out. Hopefully in time for you to read up on them before you make your decisions on voting. But we did want to also suggest that there's a couple, these two questions actually came from a council member. Was Lisa still on your council? I can't remember.
Lisa's daughter is.
Lisa's daughter is, Alicia. Okay. So Alicia came up with some questions that she might want to ask her legislators, and we just put those up that are very simple questions. Many people like me are waiting for services from Medicaid. What can you do to help? That gets to that waiting list issue. And then people who need services can't find workers. How can you help recruit workers? So those are just a couple options you might want to think about asking your legislators. I'm sure there's dozens of ways you could say that, but and get to other issues. Maybe voting is a big issue for you, or transportation, or any of the issues that there's education related issues. You might have your own questions. I encourage you to share those with others, because they might be wondering how, what they can ask as well.
Thank you, Amy. I always like to take an opportunity to talk about our legislative priorities. Our legislative priorities for last year are going to hopefully look really similar this next year, which are people receiving service need more staff. And we need to figure out some really great ways for Iowa to continue to invest in the people that provide services. And so how would that look? So more staff, that's a great question to ask. And Alicia's hit on both of these, is how can people get more service? And one of them is, fulfilling the staff. And then the second is finding workers. Our second priority is making Iowa more accessible, whether that's voting, transportation, simple ways to get around, or even the physical parts of our everyday environment, getting into your post office or voting. Those are important pieces. And then our third is the waiting list. It continues to be an issue. And Alicia hits on both of those questions. The second thing, just to reiterate what Amy said, is that second question about the Secretary of State. I just want to point out that their website does actually have a direct link to making voting easier for people with disabilities. Go there and figure out, they walk you really right through. They've got some really good videos in there that kind of update and kind of provide information on how to vote as well. And so I know our current Secretary of State has a strong commitment to making voting easier for Iowans. And that kind of makes me think of, and Brooke may want to add to this, but we are going to have some voting updates, kind of working with different counties here this fall. We're going to be in Sigourney with our council member, Hugh, and then in Spencer and in Sheldon. And we are kind of collaborating right now with agencies and advocacy providers in all three of those locations, and then with the county auditors, so that they can hear from self-advocates on why voting is difficult in that area, but how can they cast their vote and make sure that they're heard in those areas. So just something to be thinking about here for this fall. And then just to kind of wrap up, I'm going to hit on those big dates again one more time. I've got the link there to the right, but you can request your ballot coming up here in August 30th through the 24th. Make sure you're registered, but you have to do that by October 24th. There's the Saturday before elections where you can vote at your county auditors. The last day to vote, deadline to vote in person with an absentee ballot, if you're going to drop that off or get it mailed in, is that November 7th. And then the general election, make sure that you're heard on those dates. And then you can do it all at the Secretary of State. I already kind of made that plug, sos.iowa.gov. Verify you're registered. You can register online. You can print out your absentee ballot request form there. You can track your ballot to make sure it's getting there, and then find your polling location. And then please also use our website, the Iowa DD Council. And both of those links are there. That's the spelled out version here that I'm kind of circling there. I hope I'm circling. I guess I'm not seeing who you're seeing. And then off to the right there, it says voter assistant. That's a direct link, which Brooke has put in your context. So
I put in that a couple of times in the chat. And then I put in a link to register for those 3 trainings. So if you are from those counties or areas or know of people that they're living in those areas, please share the word about those 3 voter trainings that we already have scheduled.
Okay.
Hey, Bill, I was just going to clarify, you don't have to be pre-registered to vote by October 24th. It's a really smart idea, so you don't run into any trouble. But you can register to vote at the polls. You just have to bring additional information. So it's just better to make sure you're registered to vote by October 24th. But I didn't want to leave anybody with the impression if they missed that deadline, they couldn't vote. They can still, you know, register at the polls and vote. They'll have to work it out and make sure that it'll be a challenge vote,
right.
But
right.
Or provisional ballot is what they call it.
Yep. Yeah, I think that, I mean, the big thing, just like you said, Amy, the big things are, you know, the material that we have out there really kind of just goes at the target or the deadline of when things are due and when you can mail those in. And we did want to provide some back history on maybe what those changes were, so you kind of knew how that affected you. But really kind of get now, as it gets closer, it's just narrowing in what are the time frames. And once you choose to vote, if you need assistance, there's a lot of assistance out there. If you choose to vote by absentee ballot, we can help you with that. If you choose to vote in person, then it's a little more cut and dried. So.
Did anybody vote at the straw poll at the fair? That's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Brady did say they had a question a while back, and I don't know if we have any other questions that we can open it up for, but Brady, do you still have a question?
Yeah, I believe it was my long thing I put in there. So this is just a great time to bring this up, but so I moved from Glenwood to Waverly. And so when I moved, I realized that I needed to update my voter registration, you know, with my current address now. And then if I wanted to stay Republican, Democrat, or, you know, change my party. And I did all that online. And then maybe about a week later, they sent me a card. And I thought it was like the original card, your voter registration card. So we went to schedule an appointment or something to get my ID, state ID, updated, and so they sent it back, and then we got to looking at it, and it said some weird thing on it. But anyways, I basically had to check mark off on the card stating that the address on the card that they sent me was correct, and then send it back in. So I guess it wasn't my actual voter registration card, which I thought it was. And I was just curious on maybe why that happened, because I updated all my information as far as my new address online. So I guess to me, if they're sending those out, that's kind of a concern. I mean, how could they make that easier for people when they're updating their addresses online to where they could just update it and send them their new voter registration card instead of having to go through the hassle of sending a card, checking it off, sending it back in, and then them resending, the auditor's office then resending your voter registration. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, it was so confusing and just like so frustrating, because I thought that wasn't my actual card. And then we got to look at it and it wasn't.
Brady, you know, it's interesting. I would just add to what you're saying there, and Brooke kind of hit on this earlier, is that some of the new laws that have been proposed or been accepted have made it more difficult for people with disabilities, but it has also made it more complicated sometimes and more difficult for anybody to do that. And again, I think that the true intent is to kind of make sure that there's voting integrity. And if there's concerns about there from either side, they just want to make sure that we have the right processes. And there's a lot of people in place who are trying to make sure that goes correctly. But I would just say that we have actually been in a lot of conversation this year with the Secretary of State's office. They're very interested in understanding from a person's with lived experience, why is it more difficult? And Brooke said this earlier, to say all of that, to say, when you have complications and you have issues, that's another chance for you to advocate. I think that your county auditors are listening. I think the Secretary of State certainly has people at their office that are listening. We're listening. And I think telling that experience, I think that they start out and they create a process that they think is right and it's going to work. And then when there's a lot of options there where that could have, you might not have mailed it back in, or you might have submitted your information, they mailed it to you, and then you didn't get that mail. And then all of a sudden your registration, you're waiting on it. And there's issues there. They can make it simpler. And you explaining that and advocating for that is really a good chance. Because I think they don't, until they've went through it and they hear feedback. If they don't hear feedback, I think they think everything is going well. And so I think from Brooke's perspective is we're not really, as a DD council, trying to get into the larger debate about voting integrity. We're just saying from a perspective of a person with a disability, nothing about us without us. If it's complicated or if it's more difficult, you need to let someone know. And it could be your legislator because they'll be voting on that law, or it could be the Secretary of State's office because they create the processes. It's a great chance to advocate and say, hey, this was pretty complicated. And there's a lot of options there for error, a lot of variances there.
Sure.
And I think also you can advocate with your county auditor. It might just be the wording on it. I think what's happened is that they need to make sure they verify your address so that somebody else didn't go in and change your address for you and have it go somewhere else. But it could have been a letter that just said, send this back or call us with this confirmation code, or, that you would have on the, kind of similar to when you do a change with your bank or something. Where you can then call rather than go in or send a letter. But I think it's meant to be verifying your address so that they know that you are who you are and that your sister didn't ask for your your ballot to be mailed to her. So
right.
So I think that's the reason, but a lot of it could be just how they write it too to make it.
So Amy and Bill, maybe you guys could help me with this, but since I moved to Waverly, I've been trying to do a lot of advocacy work and help, with General's campaign, but I have wanting to reach out to Congressman Liz Mathis. She is in my area, and she's done a lot of advocacy work with my mom and dad as far as trying to advocate for my sister with disability. And I have looked everywhere and I cannot find a contact number for her campaign. I've been wanting to reach out to them just on some different advocacy. So if you guys sometime here soon would be able to maybe research some of that info, I couldn't find an exact number anywhere. So if you guys ever come up with that number, please send that over to me.
We can do that, Brady, and make sure that you have that. So if there aren't any other questions, I just want to remind people or encourage people to make sure to hear that you're voting. Brooke, I know I shared this information with our council and then also with other connectors, but Amy asked me, now this is my last capital chat with the Iowa Developmental Disability Council as the public policy manager. I've taken a job with Lutheran Service in America, doing a lot of the same work, advocating for people with disabilities. And so I've really enjoyed the Capital Chat. I think it's a great option for us to kind of share information and be out there. But I just wanted to leave with two thoughts that I think I've heard a lot from Brady over the time is that, make sure you're heard. Make sure that you speak up on behalf of the things that are important to you, so that people know your perspective. And then that, there's a long time adage of nothing about us without us, and making sure that, legislators are voting on laws from people that they've heard from. And if they're not hearing from a person with a lived experience with a disability, or they're not hearing from us as advocates, then they're going to vote that way. So I really appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this and partner up with Amy on these Capitol chats, and with Brady on the council, and of course Brooks. So thank you for that chance. And I hope that this has been helpful. Like Brooks said, we have a ton of information out there that is supposed to be helpful to help you vote, and your voice matters. And so I hope that you're voting here coming up in November. So
I think we'll have to invite Bill back for a special appearance in his new role at some point. But I feel like I should have kept all of those bloopers from our various sessions and done a blooper reel for your final goodbye.
Yeah, we've had some good ones.
We can still share that, Amy, after the fact.
And Bill, maybe down the road you could come and join one of our meetings and kind of talk about what you're doing with Lutheran Services of America.
Thank you, Brady. I would love to do that. And
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yep. I told Brooke I'll be listening in, because I do feel like this is the information we need to hear. And I know that Amy and Brooke will make sure. I mean, they drive it. They make sure that all of our advocates and our council knows what's happening. And so this is where to go. It's the information network. So.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks.
Everybody have a great weekend.
We are.
Happy Friday, everyone.
I was going to say we're skipping September, but we'll be back in October with these. So
that last Friday, I believe, right?
Yep, last Friday. Yep. See you guys.
Bye.